Yep. We are live.
Yes, good evening, Prof. Good evening, Pastor Tammy. It's so good to see you tonight. How are you doing? Prof, when you smile like this, right? You just make me feel a little uncomfortable, like, BB, yes, I'm here with you. But yes, that's the smile I was looking for. That's the one I was looking for. Yes. Good evening, Pastor Tammy. Good evening, sir. How are you doing, sir? Good
I'm
to
all
have
right.
you here.
I'm good. Good to be here once
Good
again.
evening, baby. How are you?
Yes, good evening. I'm good. I'm very well. Viewers, good evening to you. We're back again in your living rooms, your kitchens, your bedrooms, your playrooms, your garages. You know, some people do have some sort of sitting arrangement in their garage. So,
Your
yes, we're
outdoor
back.
cinemas too?
Well, oh yes, exactly. Yes, your cinemas. Yes, true. Yes. So we're back again live on the House on the Rock London Lighthouse platforms, talking about the very, very conversation that we are all aware of. We know what is happening. This is about the vaccines, the vaccination, COVID-19 vaccine. What is it about? And do you know, last time we didn't really get to this part, but this time we will be getting in there, and that is Illuminati and what it's all about. And I'm glad Pastor Temi is on tonight to help us to understand, because I personally want to learn as well. Prof, how do you feel? What are you looking forward to get out of tonight's conversation?
Well, like any other conversation, right? Let's get some light in there. I'm interested in hearing what's on people's minds and seeing how we can help answer those questions. And of course, just thinking together through some of the questions at the heart of people's concerns in this season.
Nice, nice. I like that. Thank you. Pastor Temi, I'm sure you're up to something tonight. You're also looking forward, as much as you want to be a blessing, you also want to be blessed. What are you looking forward to from tonight's conversation?
I'm looking forward to light. I'm looking forward to illumination. I'm looking forward to knowledge. We all should be students, willing to learn new
Right.
things, willing to grow. And I don't assume I know all things. Far,
Yeah.
far be it from me. I want to also learn and grow.
Oh, nice. So I think we're all on the same page tonight. And I'm sure viewers, please put in the comment section what you're looking forward to get from tonight's conversation. What do you want to know? The first section of this that we had a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was now, we kind of spent a lot of time understanding what vaccines are, what do they do, what makes a difference in the COVID-19 vaccine to the other vaccines that we know. And Prof went into a lot of like, not technical bit, but at least helping us understand how the vaccine works. And Pastor Temi as well helped us to understand from a spiritual point of view and also from a medical point of view as well. So for those who didn't join us last time, and this is your first time, so this is why I am going to ask for us to do this again. I would like Pastor Temi and Dr. Zubi. So I call Dr. Zubi Prof, as in, like, I not literally sometimes can't remember his first name. So his name is like Prof in my head. So you hear me call him Dr. Zubi or Prof, just know I am calling the same person. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to ask them to please introduce themselves to us. I mean, we all know Pastor Temi, and it's Pastor Temi, Pastor Temi, Pastor Temi. But I don't know if you've noticed on your screen tonight, his name is actually Dr. Temi Odejide. So that's a secret I've just told you there, in case you didn't know. It's not just a pastor, but he's also a doctor, a medical doctor. And I have Prof on the other end, who isn't a doctor, even though he's a doctor. And he will explain it because he has a PhD and he will tell us what that really means, right? But he is a scientist. So I think, Prof, maybe we should start putting scientists, Zubi, okay, Mefuna. I don't know if that's something where we can call you, right? So you can see that we have a house full of experts. So, Pastor Temi, please go for it first. Please let us get to know you. People who haven't met you before, tell us a bit about you, sir.
All right. Thank you so much, Bibi. Yeah, I'm a pastor. I'm the resident pastor of House on the Rock, London. But I'm also a medical doctor by training. I graduated from the Obafemi Awolowo University in Ile-Ife, and I practiced for a couple of years before I hung up the stethoscope to follow the call of God upon my life. But once a doctor, always a doctor. Humorously, quite a few times in my pastoral career, if you would call it that, and members of the church will come to meet me about their health concerns, and they'll be telling me their symptoms and what they're going through and all of that. And I would have to stop them somewhere in the middle and I ask them that, do they want the doctor or do they want the pastor? Because if you're talking to the doctor, I'll give you some prescriptions and some medical advice. If you're talking to the pastor, I'll give you some counsel and some prayers and send you to a doctor. I wear both caps. My primary cap right now is the pastoral cap, while the doctor is the back seat, but very much real. Now, being a medical doctor doesn't immediately make you an expert in vaccines or vaccinations. Yeah, it depends on your specialty. However, any medical doctor that is worth his salt should have some foundational and reasonable knowledge of vaccinations and vaccines, even though he should not tout himself as an expert in vaccination and immunology, unless that is the area of medicine that they focused on.
Wow. That's honestly, Pastor Temi, I have to say thank you so much, sir, for answering the call to be a pastor. Because if you didn't answer that call, we wouldn't have you as our pastor today. So thank you. God bless you, sir. Prof, so I've got medical pastor, medical pastor, medical doctor, and a pastor. And then I have a scientist, as I said. Prof, please tell us a bit about you. I said you're prof, you're PhD, your doctor, your scientist. So please explain all of that to our viewers tonight.
Hi, Bibi. Thank you. And hi, everyone. So, yes, I have a PhD in structural and molecular biology. Got that from University College London. My specialty in that space is the field of immunology. Okay, so my research was really based around human immunity. A part of human immunity that is the innate type, but I also worked with antibodies. And a lot of that work was really looking at the structure and function relationship between immunology and immune system and potential treatments and potential disease conditions. And then after spending some time in academia, I also spent some time in the industry, in research and development and in the product development process. So with both hands-on experience and indirect experience of the product development process. So right from the conceptualizing of drugs to the development, the clinical trials of those drugs, the approvals of those drugs. In that process, in that time, I was involved in everything, right? So from the kind of lab bench work where you actually transform the cells, grow the cells, get the viruses, all of that stuff, to the point of even the manufacture of it, and then speaking with regulators in Europe and the US and getting those drugs licensed and approved for use. And also on the back of that, I've been involved in advising companies who are in the space, okay, who are doing different things, working really hard to create new drugs and new treatments for different disease conditions. So in summary, I have the background, okay, in the academic background and training in that space. Or of course, I should mention I've authored and co-authored a number of scientific publications, which you can find. Just Google my name, you would see them there. Quite a few of them, over 500 citations in that space. Again, authoring, co-authoring across immunology and some neurological conditions as well. So what am I saying? Not a novice in this space. Understand what it takes, understand what is involved in it, both the technical part and the commercial part of it, and also the regulatory part of it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to bring that knowledge to this conversation.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Viewers, you've heard it. You know, Prof he said all of those things that he said, just so that we know that he's well qualified to have this conversation with myself and Pastor Temi. So last time we had this conversation, there was some questions we couldn't go through because of time, even though we were online for 2 hours. And hopefully tonight we'll be able to cover a lot more questions. And so viewers, this is more for you. If there are questions that you have that you want us to answer tonight, please start putting them in the comment section. And also, guys, share this feed with your friends, your family. Tell them we are live so that they can join us in this conversation. Remember, we're not just talking about the vaccine tonight. We're also going to be talking about Illuminati. That is very key. I think as Christians, we just need to know. So thank you so, so much, Pastor Temi and Dr. Zubi. God bless you. So I'm going to kickstart the questioning. And I think what we should do to start with actually is that for the benefit of those who didn't join the first one we had and who haven't caught up yet, I think if we can just spend a couple of minutes, just a couple of minutes to explain what this vaccine is about. This vaccine, this COVID-19 vaccines. And, as we know, we have different ones now, what they are about and what they do, just very briefly. And if I go to Dr. Zubi first, and then Pastor Temi from a pastoral and a spiritual view, what your views are on this vaccine and your, from your medical experience as well, how vaccine to work. So, Dr. Zubi, over to you.
Dr. Zubi, it sounds really strange to hear you say that, maybe.
I know, right? Because I don't call you that. But yes.
Yeah. So whenever you have a public health situation, there is a number of tools, or there are a number of tools that are available to any organization in charge, in this case, the government, to deal with that public health situation. One of the most urgent and one of the most significant public health challenges you would see would be something that is an infectious disease, because when an infectious disease happens, it can spread from one person to another quite quickly. And then you have something becoming endemic to a region, then it becomes an epidemic, then it becomes a pandemic, and it just spreads. And that's exactly what we saw with COVID. So when you face a public health situation like that, the question you have to ask yourself is, what is the best way I can deal with this to make sure it stops spreading and it stops leaving casualties behind it? And that's where you come to vaccination. Among all the other things that we've seen, so social distancing, asking people to stay at home and trying to keep, stop the spread of the disease through physical measures, vaccination is a key tool in every public health intervention in dealing with a pandemic or an epidemic. Why? Because what a vaccination does, or a vaccine does, is that it doesn't just treat. In fact, it doesn't treat the disease. What it does is that it goes to people who have not even yet caught it, and it trains their immune system to fight it. So it means that as the disease continues to spread from one person to another, it gets to a point where somebody has taken a vaccine and suddenly it hits a roadblock. That's the intention. And when it can't get to that person, it looks to the next person, roadblock. And you know what? When that disease cannot spread any further, over time, it starts to die out. So that's why vaccination is so important. In a nutshell, what a vaccine does is that it prepares the immune system of the person who hasn't actually caught the disease yet to be able to fight it off, so that the first time that disease comes to that person, the vaccine is able to help the person overcome it and also potentially not transmit it to anybody else.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I think that was such a great foundation, very easy to understand, easy to the ears. So you can understand this about, okay, it's not something magical or anything that is put into it, but it's actually something we can relate to. Pastor Temi, do you have anything to add to that, please?
I think Dr. Zubi has already done a great job. I think the only angle that I would add to it, probably more from the faith angle, if you like. God built our bodies for health and for healing. He built our bodies with everything inside it to be able to heal itself. Yeah. In fact, I find it quite interesting that in the book of Revelations, it talks about the new heaven and the new earth. It now says that the tree of life is in that the city of God, and the leaves are for the healing of the nations, which immediately creates a little bit of a wonder that why would that we need any healing in the future, in the glorious new heaven and new earth? Well, I guess that question will be answered when we are there. But
right.
it does show us clearly that God is very much into healing, and he built our bodies to heal themselves. So there are systems within our bodies that are built to be able to heal itself whenever there's a disease. That's why when you have a cut, your body rushes to heal itself. When you have bacteria, when you have anything coming against, in fact, you know how many bacterium is running through a human body system every single day? know how many assaults the human body is facing every single day as you step out, even if you stayed indoors, you're still being hit with all sorts of stuff. But your body is built to be able to handle all of those assaults. And now the knowledge that God has allowed us, discover over the years to be able to help the human body deal with these assaults are not the enemy, they are the help.
Yeah.
And vaccination is one of such discoveries, where a vaccine helps your body develop antibodies in advance of being exposed to any assailant, and then you're able to deal with the assailant. So it's definitely not something from hell. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Pastor Tim. I had to chuckle a little bit there. It's definitely not something from hell. It is something that is good. It is necessary for us to have it. So thank you, sir. Thank you. I think you're going to be reminding us tonight of what is hell related and what is heaven related. You know, there are some things, as you rightly said, if there's this glorious place in heaven, why are we thinking about this that we need to cure, things like that? But I think we will get there because there's something that we're leading to on here. And this will take us to, because we need to understand it as Christians. We're talking about what we shouldn't eat. You know, like they say, oh, meat. You shouldn't eat meat if you like be a vegan and prof, you know what I'm talking about, right? Be a vegan and all of that. And we're saying, but Bible says everything is pure. Everything God made is pure. So why don't we? But anyway, that's a conversation for another day. So I have a question here, Pastor Temi. Thank you so much, Prof and Pastor Temi. So this question, I'm sure it was one of the questions that we weren't able to answer last time. And so it is good that we have this opportunity to answer this question. And it says that, will the current vaccines be effective on the new COVID-19 variants? Prof, I remember you said this before, that these variants, I mean, this is a virus, right? It would keep being changing every time until there is a cure for it. So there will be, and in the last, a month or 8 weeks, right? We've heard about different variants now, right? And there's even the South African variant that people here in the UK who haven't traveled anywhere are catching it. You know, and for me, that's another question there that we will talk about later. But this question we've got on the screen now, can you please talk to this one? So, will the current vaccine be effective on the new COVID variant, please?
So the answer to the question is probably, but if the answer, so the question is about when you say the current vaccine, so you're probably referring to the three that have been approved here. So you have the Pfizer one, the Moderna one, and you have the AstraZeneca one. So there has been some limited testing, or there has been some limited testing that has shown that actually, yes, certainly the AstraZeneca one is effective against the so-called British Kent variant, and then to some extent the South Africa one, and the Moderna one as well. The one thing to point out with these vaccines, like you said, I think at the moment there are about 4,000 different variants, right? The virus will continue. Pastor Temi, I can see your eyes. Yes, I mean, the viruses will mutate. That's just what they do. The question, excuse me, the question is, what is the consequence of that variant, the variance, the variation, the mutation, whether it has any consequence on the immunity, on the immune system. The reason we're hearing about these ones is because they are the ones. There's the so-called E484K mutation, which is found in the South Africa variant and found in others. And the point of it is that it affects the impact, or it affects the ability of the vaccines to be effective. So to some degree they will be, right? But without having the evidence to show very clearly that they are, you're asking me to guess. Okay, so all I can say to you is, with the limited evidence that is available, yes, of course the ability of these vaccines to be effective will be reduced. Okay, but the vaccines that are coming up, they now have the benefit of being able to test people with these variants. Okay, so the vaccine with Novavax, the vaccine with Janssen, okay, these ones have been tested against these variants and they are effective. So, but I think the underlying question, I guess, in this sense is, how much do you need to be concerned about these variants? I think that's really the question, right? The question is not so much whether the current vaccines is about how much should you be concerned about them. What I can say is, think about the flu vaccine. Did you know that one of the reasons why you have to take the flu vaccine every year is that the vaccine needs to be updated to deal with new variants? So that is a thing already. So it should not be anything that is a surprise to you. That's already being done, and there's absolutely no reason why this shouldn't be the case. In fact, with the new technologies available, within a matter of months, you would have the updated vaccine to the variant. So again, I would say there isn't anything to suggest that it's something to be overly worried about. As far as the vaccines are concerned, obviously we need to behave ourselves and do what we need to do. But in terms of the vaccine, the technologies that we have, thank God, are able to put us on the front foot as far as these variants are concerned.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof, for that. You know, what you just said right there, I never thought about it. You know, we take this vaccine every year. For instance, the flu jab that people take every year, but you never know whether you're taking an updated one or the same one you were given last year. You just get a letter. It's time to take the vaccine, and you just go and take it. So this is probably going to be the same thing. Because I remember when this whole pandemic started initially, the first thing that was said by the government was, this might turn out to be like the annual flu jab that people get. And I think at that time, I was like, well, please don't even come with that. Like, it was such a bad thing. But right now, we know that it isn't bad. So thank you very much for that. Very quickly, and this, I want to still stay with you, Prof. So this is on the South African variant. So now, when I saw on the news that some postcodes in the UK have got the variant, and this is with people who haven't stepped outside of the country. How did that come about? Like, because I was thinking, I mean, this might be my own layman understanding, or because of my ignorance of this whole thing in the medical industry. But I was thinking that, so how did they name it South African variant? Is it that they found it in South Africa, and then they found it in the UK, and it looks similar, and that's why they named that one as, because I mean, if you've not traveled, how do you catch that? So can you please just explain what that is to us?
It's a bit like Storm Christopher, Storm Nicole. You know, usually when these names are given, they are given to resonate. Okay, and sometimes, as with many things, when the naming actually tells you, gives you an idea of where it was first found. Doesn't mean that's the only place it's found, or where it was first found, or by whom it was first found. So the same thing with these variants. When you hear, for example, the British variant, the same variant has been found in the US and found in other places, right? And in fact, I think the same variant was even found in Sweden around the same time. But where it was, I guess, it was first widely recognized as being prevalent. That's why it's called British. It helps you to understand which variant that is, because if they said B116.7, yeah, you would they'll just lose you, right? So there are technical names for these variants, but they use these kind of layman's terms to explain them. The same thing with the South African one. So you would find that, I think that in the clinical trial, the Janssen one, or even the Novavax one, they found out that I think about 75 to 85%, something like that, of the people who were registered on or who actually caught COVID, because they are having an arm of the trial in South Africa, a good proportion of those people had the so-called South Africa variant. That's not surprising, because, you know, if it was found there earliest and it's very quick to be transmitted, then you would find the majority of them there. So in a sense, that's positive for the vaccine, because you can rely on the result. So to your question, so how then can you find it in different places, or how is it possible for somebody who hasn't actually traveled to then have that variant? Again, without guessing, because that's again where you have epidemiologists spending some time to try to understand why this has happened. But there are a number of possibilities. One possibility being that actually the virus has just mutated in different places in the same way. So even though you call it the South Africa variant, it's actually done the same thing elsewhere. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that, well, you haven't been actually able to get the complete truth as far as the people's movements are concerned. Okay, there might be something that you're not aware of. So again, that's where there's kind of forensic accuracy and attention to detail in these things. Somebody may have forgotten something, right? Ultimately, I think that it's important, of course, to understand how these are transmitted and how these move from one place to another, because it helps us to map its movements and understand better, right? Because the more you can understand how it's being transmitted, the more you can be sure that what you're going to do will work. But I think what's more important is also to understand whether we are able to deal with these variants. And like I said, the technologies we have are able to deal with them. Yes, there will still be work trying to understand how these come up, but there are a number of possibilities, and until those are explored and explained, we will not be there for sure.
Wow.
Can I add something right there?
Please,
one thing that I think comes out very clear, and that I want our listeners, those that are watching live and those that might watch this later, is that we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that we are not saying anything that's an assumption, that we're going to tell the truth as to the best of our abilities and the best of our knowledge. Yeah. We are not pro-government, pro any of those things. We're just pro-truth. Yeah. That's what we are about. And I really like what Dr. Zubi just said. The two possible ways in which the South African variant is being found here in the United Kingdom. The virus here might have mutated to that particular form, just like it did in South Africa, or there's community transmission, where the people that brought it in from South Africa didn't give their full. They forgot something. They didn't tell you somewhere they went, where they
disclosure.
Somebody else exposure, and the thing has gone. And that's why in this last week there was a concerted effort to be doing mass testing to check, is this South African virus, particularly in the epicenters where it had been found, to see how far might it already be in that community, and to curb community to community spread. As it stands right now, the amount of South African variant in the UK is very low in comparison with obviously where it came from.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Pastor Temi and Dr. Zubi. Thank you. I can see the questions rolling in already. So I'll just let us get straight to it. There is another question here, and I think you answered this last time that we had the conversation, and it's on the side effects of the vaccines. So someone tonight would like to know, what are the side effects of the vaccine? So this is open to either Pastor Temi or Dr. Zubi. Whoever wants to go first, I'm happy. Go on.
I'll let Dr. Zubi go first.
Globally, there's been something like, over 100 million people, right? 120 million people more that have taken the vaccine. So I think the question of side effects, now we're no longer talking of results from clinical trials, we're talking of real world evidence. And if we're talking of clinical trials that have been where the vaccine has been exposed to 200, 300,000 people, now we're talking of an entire order of magnitude, 200 million, something like that, So what am I saying? Again, I know you might be asking about the side effects. Frankly, if you want me to read you the list of side effects, you're better served by just finding a place where it's published and reading it. So I would imagine that's not really the question you're asking, because you can find that information. Perhaps the question you're asking is, you're trying to ask yourself, are the side effects so severe that I should be concerned, or is there something, or on the other hand, can I use the side effects as an excuse to not take the vaccine when it's my turn? And that's why I talk to the numbers. The side effects, if you've ever taken any vaccine in your life, then you would know what the side effects are. They will be very similar, muscular ache, sometimes you might have a fever, nothing unique, right? Nothing different. The same sorts of things you might see. And by the way, it doesn't mean you're going to have them, right? We're saying the common ones. That doesn't mean everybody has them. You might have absolutely zero side effect. Lots of people who've had it say, I don't feel anything. Okay. So as far as side effects are concerned, there isn't anything that is out of the ordinary that you should be concerned about, unless you have a medical condition, pre-existing medical condition, in which case you should be getting medical advice anyway. So if you're asking me whether there's any side effect that you should be specifically concerned about, I would say not particularly, unless there's something else that about you that you want us to know. Otherwise, the side effects are the standard ones you would expect from vaccinations.
Okay.
Just to add a little bit to that, when you compare the side effects with the effects of having a full-blown case of COVID-19, there's no comparison.
Mm.
To be in admission, to be in ICU, to be intubated, and all of those things that happen to the severe cases. You can't compare that with fever, headache, sore limb,
Feeling lethargic, things
feeling
like that.
lethargic. You just can't compare it. And the larger majority of people right now seem to be very, very minimal side effects, or no notable side effects at all. Somebody did put a question that I'm seeing somewhere in the feed here that is right in the same family as this, where it said most people are reacting to Pfizer vaccine. Which one is better, Oxford Pfizer or Moderna? I would like Dr. Zubi to probably speak to this, but again, brethren, everybody that's listening to me, I need us to be very careful about generalizations. And we are want to do this, and even I sometimes fall victim to this, to use very strong absolute statements that are not quite founded on provable statistics. Yeah, when we say most people, are you sure most people? Where did that statistic come from that you are sure that it is most people that are reacting? Maybe you know 2, 3, 4, maybe you even know, and I doubt it, 50 people that have had a reaction to the virus. That's still not most people in the context of how many people have taken this virus. But that's not what we're going to address. I just use this as an opportunity to educate all of us in the absolute statements that we tend to make, to try to be more specific about the statements that we make. But back to you, Dr. Zubi. What do you think? Are there more reactions to a particular vaccine, or is there a vaccine that is better than the others?
So I can just echo what you said, Pastor Temi. I think the reason that these things go through so much rigorous testing and approvals process with a lot of oversight is precisely for what you're saying. One of the things that would happen with every approved medicinal product is that you can call it a registry, is opened for all side effects. So every side effect that is being of the 124 million people that have taken this vaccine now outside of clinical trials, including the 100,000 plus, 150,000 plus now who've taken it in clinical trials, all of those ones will be monitored. Well, not monitored, but they will be solicited. If there are any adverse events, they report them, and all of these adverse events are being, checked and monitored. I tell you that if there is any particular one that you can see that the adverse event profile is significantly different from the others, then action will be taken. Right now, I think that, to echo what Pastor Temi said, I really don't think there's any evidence or data to support that sort of statement. So until we know otherwise, I would say that's not actually fact. It may reflect some experience you may have had, but that's not certainly generalizable to the overall population. So that's not fact as far as we know. In terms of whether any of them is better, again, it depends on what you mean. Better in terms of what, right? Certainly in terms of storage and in terms of being able to handle and use, there are differences. Okay, so the AstraZeneca one is more easily handled, right? Because it can be stored at room temperature for a longer time, right? And then it can be stored for even longer at fridge temperature, right? 2 to 8 degrees. The other ones, not so much. I don't know whether you've heard of some cases where people do vaccine hunting, if you like, where they know that some vaccines, for example, the ones that have to be frozen at minus 80 degrees, if you keep them at room temperature, they are viable for so long. So if they keep them, at the end of the day, they can't freeze them back, so they have to throw them away. And you see some people jumping from place to place trying to get these vaccines, and that's a consequence of the stability. So if you're looking at it from a supply chain perspective, and you're representing a government, and you're maybe in a place where your power supply isn't that great, and you're thinking which vaccine would be most easy to handle for the population of my country, well, that's one way to look at it. So that's something to consider. If you're asking me in terms of the individual who's going to be taking the vaccine, whether it's which one is better or not. Now, bear in mind that the purpose of vaccination is not to give you superpowers, okay? The purpose of vaccination is, in essence, from a public health perspective, to reduce the number of people that fall sick with COVID, get hospitalized, more importantly, and die, most importantly, okay? Because if we were only talking of mild COVID, where nobody got hospitalized, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, okay? And so from the perspective of people getting hospitalized and people actually dying from COVID, all of vaccines are pretty much the same. There is nobody that took those vaccines, certainly that died due to COVID afterwards, or that had very severe COVID afterwards. So as far as that level is concerned, yeah. Now, if you start talking of, kind of the vaccine efficacy, you see these numbers, right? These numbers would range from 60%, also 66% up to 95%. Ultimately, what I would say to you is that as far as the vaccines that you're going to be taking are concerned, when you go to the GP, when you go to the place where the vaccine is being administered, when you're offered the vaccine, then the one you're offered is the one that you should take. If you do have a choice, well, if you do have a range of options and you're asked to choose, then maybe we can have that conversation at that time. But as of now, that's not the case here. So whichever one you're offered, that's the one you should take.
So thank you very much, Dr. Prof. Dr. Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. As you said, if you have the option, so because I'm here to hear about having options at any place whatsoever. But yes, maybe that's something else to discuss. But Dickiness Minister said something as we were talking about the side effects, and she said she had her first vaccine on Wednesday. Well done to you, Ma. Well done. Kudos to you, And she said everything was fine, but the following day she felt a bit lethargic, which is what you would expect anyway with some of these jabs when we get them. And but she said truthfully, up to date, she's feeling very fine. And one thing she said was that she thinks it differs from person to person. And that is very key. And I think this is something that we haven't really considered so much when we're talking about the side effects of this vaccine. There isn't, two people will take paracetamol and it will have two different effects in them. And that's, if you approach it that way, then maybe we will help ourselves in trying to understand what this is for and how we can get it. So thank you very much, Minister. Minister, thank you. Oh yes, honestly, I think I'm I feel really proud of you now, Ma. Thank you. That's really good. Okay, so moving on very swiftly, we have another question in-house here. We have answered the one around which one is better to take, but there's one more here that says that if someone with the vaccine falls ill as a result of the antibodies forming, will they be infectious at that time? So, Prof, I'll come to you first to speak to this. So,
okay, sorry. Yeah, you saw me squeezing my face.
Yes.
Pardon me, I'm just trying to understand the question. If someone with the vaccine falls ill as a result of the antibodies forming, will they be infectious at the time? So what I want to say, without trying to read this person's mind, right? All I would say is maybe rephrase the question, but I will reframe the question in a way that I can answer it, and then see if that answers what you're thinking. If not, you can rephrase it. So let's assume that what you're asking is, if somebody has taken the vaccine, and then after they've taken the vaccine, they fall ill with COVID, right? Would they still be infectious, even though they've taken the vaccine? So that's one way of looking at the question. And the answer to your question will be, well, without, again, prejudging any evidence to the contrary, but if we think through this and say, if somebody falls ill with COVID after taking the vaccine, it means the vaccine hasn't really protected the person for whatever reason. So for all intents and purposes, we have to treat the person as infectious, right? Remember, we're talking of a public health situation. We don't want to take the risk unless we know for sure the person is infectious. You would have to ask, and that's why you are told when you take the vaccine, act as though you're still infectious. Still socially distance, still wear your face mask, and still behave as though you are. We will find out if not. But the vaccine, right now, one of the vaccines, I think this is actually the Oxford biomedical one, which has been shown to lead to a reduction in community transmission of COVID, right? So it is expected that not only does the vaccine protect the person who's received the vaccine. When it works, it also should prevent the person from transmitting it to the other person. And that's, so it's sensible to assume that that will be the case for all the other vaccines, but that's when they've been efficacious. In this case, you're asking if the vaccine has failed. So the answer would be you have to assume the person is infectious. The other way to interpret this question might be you saying if there is some sort of antibody reaction that happens within the person. Now you're talking of a side effect. If that's an antibody reaction that happens within the person has got nothing to do with the virus, then the person will not be infectious, because it's not the virus we're talking of, right? It's something else. So I hope this answers. I'll see whether that answers your question, either of those two interpretations. If not, please, by all means, please feel free to rephrase and we'll try again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Thank you for that. Yes, I agree. I mean, I actually thought that question was more of, okay, if I've taken the vaccine, maybe the first dose, because like you have to do 2 doses, maybe the first dose, and just after taking that, you fall ill, can you transmit the virus? But yeah, as you said, if what Prof said didn't really answer your question, please rephrase the question and then send it back in to us. So someone raised a question to me yesterday, and we're talking about this vaccine, and the person said, oh, no, I've heard about on the news, they've said, oh, when you take the vaccine, you're actually saving lives. And she was like, how do I save life? Because you've told me that when I take the vaccine, it doesn't mean that I still can't catch the virus. So how do I save life by taking the vaccine? So not just my own life. So someone said to her that, oh, you're not actually just saving your own life, but you're saving other people's lives. And I was like, okay, but that's a very valid question, because it sounds a bit contradictory in a way. You've said, yes, the vaccine will not stop you from catching COVID, but prepare your body to respond well when you get it. But then you're saying that when I take it, I can save other people's lives. How? What does that mean? So, Prof, please, again, over to you. Can you speak to that for us, please?
Yeah, so I'll say a little bit about this, but I would also like Pastor Amy to chime in on this, because that aspect of saving other people's lives, certainly, you're talking of loving your neighbor as yourself. But as far as catching the virus is concerned, so I just want us to be a little bit more clear about this, right? So there's a difference between, I guess it depends on how you use the term. There's a difference between being exposed to the virus and, if you like, catching it, right? If we use catching it to mean that the virus has implanted and you're kind of you've become infectious, and then perhaps you're also showing the symptoms of it, then the vaccine actually, when it does what it does, then it should stop you from catching it. It doesn't stop you from being exposed to it, right? It doesn't stop, and that's where the lines become a little bit blurred, right? Because you may not be symptomatic, you may not fall sick with it, but you could potentially transmit it to somebody else, right? Now that's almost a theoretical question, because in principle, if the vaccine stops you from catching it, it should also stop you from transmitting. And like I said, the Oxford vaccine has actually been shown to cut the transmissions, I think, by about 2/3. So there is evidence now coming up to show that those two align. But be that as it may, what we're saying is that when you take the vaccine, okay, one of the key things, in fact, why the vaccine is such an important tool for public health, managing public health situations or public health emergencies, is that it cuts the movement of the virus from person to person, right? So just from that perspective, without even talking about what you're doing actively, right? Even passively, just saying, how when it comes to, say, this idea of gossiping, right? And somebody the chain of misinformation going from one person to another. And when it comes to you, you say, this is where it ends. I'm not passing this on. It stops here, right? If there are 5 of you in that chain and you stop that, what do you think happens to that message, that misinformation? It stops. As far as your direction is concerned, it stops moving through. And that's kind of, so on the one hand, everybody behind you who may have received it, everybody in your contact list who may have received it from you, doesn't get it because you've decided to not do anything. Now that's being passive. You haven't done anything, right? So in summary, a vaccine, when we say the vaccine is effective, what we're actually saying is that it prevents the person who has taken the vaccine from catching the disease, or at least going down with it. And in principle, it should also prevent that person from transmitting it. Okay, so that's on the one hand, how you protect other people. But on the other hand, Pastor Timmy.
It's about love. It's about love.
I like that.
There's a lot of us that have the faith, are quite convinced that we can't get this virus, we can't get sick. That's your faith, that's your level, that's where you are at. But the people around you might not be at your level of faith. And Paul teaches us in more than one place the principle of there are certain things I'm doing not because of me, I'm doing it because of others that have weaker faith. All right. So some of us are going to take the vaccination, not necessarily because of any fear or lack of faith on our behalf, on our part, but rather out of a sense of love for my brothers and my sisters, to encourage somebody else's faith and to potentially not be a spreader, you know. Of course, we've all heard about how children can be spreaders of the virus without being falling sick themselves. Yeah, and even adults can be such. So, if the vaccination is going to reduce the incidence of me being able to spread it, then it's a community duty, quote unquote. It's a duty of care. It's love um, for my neighbor that makes me do what I need to do to also protect them. So it's not all about me. Jesus was moved by compassion for others. So out of compassion for others, I do what I need to do. Having said that, also, there is such a thing as herd immunity. And I think that Dr. Zubi had already alluded to it a little bit earlier about how the virus always needs a host to continue to move. Now, when we get to a place where there are less available hosts, it naturally starts to kill the spread of the virus and ultimately causes the virus to live its lifespan and die. It's almost like its lifespan span gets restarted when it finds a new host. Yeah. Now, if you can't find a new host, then it just lives its lifespan and then it fizzles it fizzles out. So the more people that are vaccinated, the closer we are getting to herd immunity, the closer we are getting to stopping it in the community as a whole. So taking the vaccination is not just about you; it's also for everybody else.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. I'm sure the person who asked me the question is live with us, is watching this conversation. So there you have your answer there. So thank you, Pastor Temi and Dr. Zubi. There is another question here for us, and it says that I believe there is this new single jab vaccine. Why does this one not need 2 doses? So I think there was a question that was asked about this last time, about whether why are we taking one single dose of the vaccine when there are like other ones that you have to take 2 doses. So please, can you speak to that? And I think I'll come to Prof first as well, being the scientist, and Pastor Temi, you can also add to it, please.
So it's an interesting question. I think the question is, why are some 2 doses, some actually are potentially 3 doses, and this one. So I think just you knowing that there are some that are potentially 3 doses perhaps goes some way in answering the question. If I go back to something I said on another conversation we had previously, you have to understand that the process of drug development or development of medicinal products is in some ways an organic one. And I'll explain what I mean in an organic one. You have different people who have different ideas about how to solve the problem. They have different technologies that they've developed and they've been working on over many years. Okay. And like I said, they have different approaches and ideas as to how they think the problem can be solved. And one of the things that are well known about vaccines has been that in many cases, vaccines actually need a booster shot, what you call a booster shot, right? You take one shot and then you have to take another one for a number of reasons, right? The bottom line is this. If the purpose of the vaccine is to stimulate your immune response so that it's at a level at which it's able to fight off and defeat the virus, then the vaccine would not have fully done its job until it gets the immune response to that level. And that's why at the earlier development stages, when each vaccine candidate is being tested, what's tested is the immunological response, okay, the number of antibodies that it stimulates, and then that's measured, right? So that's checked. Sometimes it's checked against where there's natural immunity. So you see the levels that are needed to actually stop the virus, and then you administer the vaccine and you check, has it actually provided antibodies up to this level? And you might check it and monitor it, which is typically what would happen. You inject and then you monitor it for a few weeks and you think, okay, it's gone up, but it hasn't quite reached the level. Do I need another dose? You put another dose and then it goes up again. And then you realize after testing that actually the only way you're going to get it to a level where it will reliably provide immunity is to have 2 doses, in some cases 3. Now, in this particular case, they were able to get a vaccine candidate that's been shown to be efficacious with 1 injection, with 1 dose. Okay. Now, when you start looking at the actual numbers, they vary, but ultimately what you know that there are different candidates. This particular product is different from the ones that have been approved in some degrees, right? It's actually most similar to the AstraZeneca one, which is why it's also perhaps not surprising to find out that the AstraZeneca one, with more recent testing, they've shown that actually after a few weeks, after the 12 weeks that we're talking of, it's actually immune response is actually still high. Whereas the other two, the Pfizer one and the Moderna one, are completely different. These are mRNA vaccines. So in short, that's exactly what you would expect, that you would have a variety of options, a variety of alternatives. It's not the same people looking at these. So because it's an, in quote, organic process, what you have is a consequence of our blessing. I have to reiterate this, Pastor Temi said it earlier on. It is God's blessing that we actually have the intelligence, that we have the resources to be able to have all of these options at our disposal. And that's what it is, right? So if this becomes one of the options available and it's offered, then why not take it? Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the others. It just means that it's one option that's available among many others.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think, those things, it's really nice that people are asking questions that they have about this, because this is what we encouraged. We want people to ask the questions, and it's more to help every single one of us to make an informed decision. I know someone might ask us, oh, have you taken the vaccine? And Pastor Temi said it the last time. If he gets to his turn, he will get it like immediately. You've said the same thing as well. I have said the same thing, so we just need to keep educating ourselves. So thank you very much for that, Prof. There is a question for you, Prof. So this is coming straight to you now. Yes, and the person says, question for Prof. Can you tell us about any advancement in treatment, regeneration, for example?
Regeneron, right. So
Regeneron.
yes.
Yeah.
So this is around a monoclonal antibody cocktail. Yes. Okay. Treatment. I think that, in fact, before vaccination, the vaccines came up, the treatments were actually earlier on the scene, right? So you had a number of different candidates, repurposing of antiviral treatments, the infamous hydroxychloroquine, and a number of different antibody cocktails. So when you think of monoclonal antibodies, I'll talk about monoclonal antibodies in general, okay? Monoclonal antibodies are not a new thing, right? In fact, antibodies, that's precisely what we're talking about, right? Your body creates antibodies. In fact, even before monoclonal antibodies, or alongside it, I don't know whether you heard of this convalescent plasma. And so the idea is that there are other people who may have caught COVID and naturally recovered, well, naturally or whatever, they recovered. That means they have antibodies. So some of them have actually been approached and they've donated their plasma. The intention is that the antibodies that they've generated naturally are extracted and used to treat other people. Now, this is something that is actually, again, been with us for a long time, right? It's not new. It's, with many other diseases, rabies, think of, any kind of viral condition you can think of. There are the antibody therapy that involves taking the natural antibodies created by individuals. It's been there. There's an entire part of the industry, plasma fractionation. Again, I understand that space because I've again worked and advised in that space. But when it comes to monoclonal antibodies, you're talking of really antibodies that are designer antibodies. And these are designed and then they're expressed and grown, as it were, and they target specific parts of the virus. The intention is to do exactly what your body does, but just do it sometimes faster and do it in a more focused way, right? So what you would see with these monoclonal antibodies, and they will be a part of treatment, because when you do have people, for whatever reason, they haven't been vaccinated and they've ended up in intensive care, and then you're looking at interventions that would happen straight away, right? You don't really have the time to say, let's give a few weeks to develop immunity. That's not going to happen. Then you would have to have these treatments, a combination of managing the symptoms, right? And trying to address the virus, attack the virus directly, and then trying to also repair the damage that's been done to the parts of the body. So you would have things around monoclonal antibody space, you have things around antiviral treatment, and you have the other things that I mentioned, like convalescent plasma, extracted natural antibodies from there, and so forth. So I think that in terms of that space, there will always be that there will always be advancements in that space. But I think that as far as public health is concerned, they are not really going to be as useful a tool as vaccinations, because what you're talking of is that you would have the system already swamped. I mean, these treatments we're talking of, they're innovative, but of course they are also going to be expensive. They're going to take time to kind of mobilize, and how many people are you going to treat with that? So I understand you're curious and you're interested. That's great, and we can certainly explore that. But just bear in mind that as far as public health is concerned and managing it, nothing really is as good as vaccination. Well, what's as good as vaccination is everybody were to go to Mars or be sent to different islands where they are by themselves, all alone, then that would be good. Nobody will catch the virus. But barring that, there's nothing as good as vaccination.
Thank you, Prof. Honestly, after even when you've said so many technical words and your medical terms and everything, you still threw in that bit of us going into Mars and being on a highland. And I love you for that, because you make all of this very, very difficult conversation. You make them so easy to understand. You know, these topics, I wouldn't claim to be a doctor to even understand half of the things that go on in your world, you know, but the way you explain it every time, you just make it very simple for us. So thank you so much for that. Our guest tonight, please, our listeners, our viewers, and those that will probably join even after or that will watch this video later on, if you still have any questions on this vaccine, on the vaccination in general, or anything that you feel Prof or Pastor Timmy can help to look into, please do send them in to us. We're still online right now. So, and I think we've got to that point where everyone is waiting for, we're all waiting for this time. I know every single person is waiting for what I represent every other person. So I am waiting so eagerly for this section. And it is on the Illuminati, because I mean, we've spent quite a lot of time on vaccines and understanding it. And as we've said, we can't overflog this conversation. It will keep going on for a while. You know, I mean, this affects all of us. So can I just quickly say, actually, from our last conversation, I've had a few people reach out to me to say that, baby, you know, I have taken the vaccine now because I watch your conversation. And for me, it is very, very, it's just good, because it means that people are actually listening and people are sharing their own testimony of this. And as we saw earlier, Dickiness Millicent shared what she felt. She's taken the vaccine. And I mean, the very first time we had this conversation, she had not taken it. I'm sure she joined then and was hoping to get something that would convince her to take the vaccine. And now she's taking it. So yeah, please, people, this is very, very useful to all of us. So now, Pastor Temi, you're going to be doing a lot of the talking. By the way, our viewers, Dr. Zubi is also a minister. So as you can see, Pastor Temi is a medical doctor. Dr. Zubi is a scientist. So many of the vaccine questions, Dr. Zubi was taking a bit of a lead there, you know, because he does this every day and all of that. And Pastor Temi has just been supporting him. So now the roles are going to change now. So you will see it. Just stay with us. You will see how it's going to change, because Pastor Temi will start leading on here and Minister Zubi. So we go to that section where we call you Minister Zubi. We'll go into that. So, so Pastor Temi, see, Minister Zubi is so happy about that. He's glad about that. Yeah. All right, Pastor Temi, do you know this Illuminati conversation? This is going to be a very, I think we're going to enter a terrain where we'll be sounding very spiritual and as well as being practical, because we're all here to learn, right? As you said earlier, you alluded to this actually, that no one knows it all and we don't claim to know everything, but at least we will share what we know. So this Illuminati, and before Pastor Temi, you answer, Dr. Zubby, what is Illuminati to you? What do you know about Illuminati? So,
Why me?
because, yes, no, because Pastor Tim will be answering so many questions tonight on this. But I think, yeah, we should start that way. What is Illuminati to you, and what can you tell us about it?
Well, when I think of Illuminati, and I think probably only Africans will understand what I'm about to say next, I think of the village people wearing suits and ties, right? And so, and you know, I think in every African community, I may be stretching this a bit, but I certainly know about the Nigerian community, is that there is always this shadowy group of people that that are in the background, and to them are ascribed everything that goes wrong in people's lives. So somebody loses their job, it's the village people. Something happens, and so forth. And as with many things, often there is an interplay of fact with fiction. Obviously, somebody wouldn't have come up with that term village people if they hadn't had a back experience with somebody who didn't want them to do well. But then these myths kind of take on a life of their own. And then over time, they acquire such fabulous powers that it's even possible for the village person to go to somebody who's in the International Space Station and get get them to out of orbit. Amazing things they can do. So when I hear of Illuminati, I think that my reaction is the same. Now, was there something called the Illuminati? There was. Like I said, there's always an interplay of fact and fiction. There was something called the Illuminati, founded in Bavaria, so-called Germany now, in the 18th century. And it was around the sort of what you might call Enlightenment movements and secret societies around this, a number of them around that time were seeing the church as the oppressor, because a lot of the way that the church was enforcing its own brand of social discipline was a little bit anti-intellectual. And so that meant that people who had a different way of looking at things could not find expression within the church, and they felt repressed and suppressed. And so they founded secret societies that allowed them to express their own different points of view. Right. And then the Illuminati was one of them. I think the person that was involved in that was called Adam Weishaupt or something like that. Right. And it started off with a number of different people who were his students. He was a lecturer in philosophy or something like that. And it started with his students, and the intention was, let's use this opportunity to look at things differently and express those viewpoints that the church would not let us express. And then they had to, over time it grew, right? First, it was just people who were intellectually curious. They had people who were that, plus people who were wealthy, and people who had positions in society, and it grew from a few people to hundreds and then thousands, right, over some years, and then eventually it was banned. Okay, it was banned, and it was, and then he went into exile. So since then, it went underground. Now, are the Illuminati still active? Well, if I could tell you that they are, you might want to find out how exactly I know that, right? You'd ask me, how do you know that? Yeah.
Yes.
On the other hand, if I tell you they are not, how do you know that, right? So I think it's one of those things, right? It's, you go from the realm of fact to kind of imagination and a couple of things. And so when you ask me, get back to where I started. When you ask me, when I think of the Illuminati, what do I think? Again, I think of the village people wearing suits and ties. Are there village people? Yes. Can they affect my life the way, or affect people's lives the way people think they do? That's a question for the ages. Maybe Pastor Temi can tell us the answer.
So yes, Pastor Temi, over to you, sir. Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much for that. Yes. So Pastor Temi, so as you heard from Prof now, it's a case of, if you said, oh, they're not there So how do you know that? Oh, they are functioning. So how do you know that? And we're at a place more like a crossroad here, but definitely things we don't want to guess. We're not about guessing things. We want to make sure that whatever we say is based on facts. And also, as you said, I believe it was Prof who said this earlier, that there's always the element of truth in some of these things that you hear here and there. So Pastor Temi, what comes to mind when you hear about Illuminati? And I mean, what do you think about?
I think that Minister Zubi, Dr. Zubi, Prof, has done a good job in setting the floor. And it's good the question went to him first, because he did give us a little bit of a history lesson as regards the Illuminati and what has come, what has developed from that. Okay. The whole concept of Illuminati and other secret societies is the whole idea of a few people wielding so much power and influence upon everybody else, upon the masses, determine the direction of nations, the direction of the world, engineering and moving people in the direction that they want. That's the whole concept or the idea behind secret societies. And the Illuminati seems to be the leading name, but trust me, there are multiple other secret societies that function. And even a lot of us, when we were in university, we knew of secret societies, confraternities, and the rest. And part of the power of the secrecy was that the secrecy allowed the power of that secret organization to be exaggerated, to be amplified, to be made bigger than life. Because if it was transparent, then you just realize that, these are just people with ideas like I have. They don't have any influence beyond what any other regular person has. Yeah. But that does not mean that certain secret societies haven't steadily gained more positions, more power, and continue to still meet and to try to decide things. But before you even judge those people, you to have your own small groups where you decide and discuss and you decide the direction you want certain things to go. You're going into a board meeting and you've made a phone call to 2, 3 other board members to try to get them onto the same page with you, so that when you get into the board meeting, things will go in the direction that you want. So you are a secret society, you are Illuminati. The only thing
I like that.
we're saying that this is happening at a far bigger or higher stakes environment. Yeah. So am I going to say that Illuminati does not exist? Of course not. I'm not going to say they don't exist. I'm going to say that they very much exist, and multiple other secret societies exist that are indeed attempting and doing everything in their power to exercise influence over the world. Your elections in any country, it's different groups of people that share similar belief systems trying to get power, that let's now be in a position to move things in the direction that we want things to move. So they definitely do exist. We see this clearly. There are people that do have philosophies that make them feel that they are superior to everybody else. The Ku Klux Klan is an example. The white supremacists and so many other such groups. These are people that have an ideology that makes them superior, or makes them feel superior to everybody else. And if they are allowed to wield power, they would wipe out everybody else and allow themselves to have the ascendancy. Isn't that also what Hitler's Nazi movement was about at the end of the day, feeling that we are the superior human race and everybody else, and particularly the Jews, are supposedly inferior? So they exist. Now, where I have an issue is the amount of power we ascribe to them. In fact, the way believers talk about the Illuminati it would seem as if the Illuminati is as strong as God, if not stronger. You know, the Illuminati is so powerful. The Illuminati is the one doing absolutely everything upon the face of the earth. And I wonder, our own reference book is the Bible. You won't find Illuminati in the Bible. You hear about the spirit of the Antichrist. You hear about the Antichrist in the Bible. Yeah. Then when you study the Bible clearly, I'm sorry, I'm taking a little bit of time here. You start to understand that the same philosophy that is promoting and pushing the Illuminati in the minds of the general populace is actually the same philosophy that Satan has. Because the scripture does say that in the final day, when the son of perdition, when Satan is revealed, when he's revealed, that all the nations will look and say, is this the man that deceived the nation? In other words, there will be a look of, this person is not as powerful, is not as significant, is not as awesome, not as omnipotent as we thought he was. You mean this is the person that swayed nations, and I think that's the same thing with secret societies and Illuminati and the likes, is to make us believe they are bigger, they are so much more powerful than they really are. And it's easier for us to believe such things. Why? Because we're trying to make sense of life. We want life to be simple. We want it to do. I mean, these thousands of people dying every day. It can't be the result of a messy virus. That no. There has to be somebody that engineered this and organized this and has something to gain at the end of this happening. That it soothes us. So we have to think about how we're processing, whether we're processing on an emotional level or a logical level. So they definitely exist. I just think that their powers are overestimated. And when we now really think about it in the context of what is happening now, which is the virus and all of the deaths and so on and so forth, it's hard for me to believe that this is orchestrated by a few persons, no. We like to believe that the Illuminati decided who will be president of this and president of that. We don't want to agree that politics is messy and unpredictable, and that democracy, we've seen outcomes of elections that even the people that won didn't expect to win. That's how unpredictable it is. We don't want to admit that economies and the market forces are just not something that you can say 1 + 1 is equal to 2. So sometimes we want to retreat into a belief system that says there are a few individuals that are controlling every little thing. There are a few individuals that are trying to control every little thing. There are individuals that are trying to manipulate things and sometimes successfully succeed in manipulating things, but they ain't in control. They don't have all control. If anybody is in control on the grand stage, on the final day, it's our God.
Oh, wow. Pastor Temi, I like where you just ended it there, talking about, because I was going to go into politics a little bit, if you would indulge me, because as Christians, well, I was told that, you can't go into politics if you're a Christian, if you're a true child of God, because there's just so many things, apart from the fact that we know that politics is messy, it can be messy, it's a game of, power and all of that stuff. But talking about secret societies, Illuminati, and also even like in the music industry, people would say that, if even for gospel artists, by the way, not just the secular ones, the gospel artists, they'll say that things like, for you to make it, for you to become big and so famous and make a lot of success from this industry, you have to be a part of one of these organizations. What do you say to that? And as a Christian, should we consider things like that? Because I'm sure we have gospel activists amongst us. We have people who want to go into politics. I don't know. I might become next U.S. president. Who knows? But it's very, very possible. So yeah. So what do you say to us? To us, Prof?
Again,
Don't shake your head.
you know, all power belongs to God. So if all power belongs to God, what power does Satan have?
No power at all.
The power that Satan has, the trump card, sorry for using that word, that Satan has is deception. That is his trump card. That is his master card. That's his joker. It's deception. And right from the beginning, it was all about deception. Deceive Eve to believe something that's inaccurate and get her to sell out her own power. And it's still the same thing that is happening today, is still deception. The whole theology and belief system that suggests that Christians should not get into politics is a belief system that is, I dare say, fueled by the enemy, because you have more power than you think. And so if I can get you out of the room, then I can control the room. But if you get into the room, and if more and more of you get into the room, then, oh my goodness, then we can't have our way. So even if there is an Illuminati or there's a group of people that are trying to control, it is to their benefit that men and women of righteousness are outside the room. Then they can just have their way any way they have it in. So I would never subscribe to the philosophy or the ideology that Christians should not get into politics. Is politics dirty? Yes, but the whole of the world is dirty. There's nowhere you're going that you're not going to encounter some form of dirt. The question is that, in fact, listen, the scripture says that we are the light of the world, that we are the salt of the earth. Now, how are you going to be light to a world that you refuse to go into? How are you going to be salt in the gravy if you are not going to be mixed with the gravy? So we're actually meant to go into the world. Jesus says, go ye into all the world. He didn't say go ye into all the earth. He said world. World is now about the systems, the structures. So the truth is, we as believers are meant to be going into the world, going into all the sectors, going into all the fields, we shouldn't be locked up in our churches. We actually meant to, the church is supposed to be training ground. We come out of go into the various sectors. So I would say that Christians definitely need to get involved in politics, especially those of us that feel we have a call in that area, have a passion and a propensity there. But we do need to be very studious, particularly in the day we are in, to understand what we believe, how we believe, and so on and so forth. As regards the music scene, yes, again, the idea will be sold that the only way to rise to the top is to sign a deal with the devil. Then you can rise up to the top. Well, as I'm wont to say, that devil is a liar. Again, he is ascribing it to himself and causing us to believe he has far more power than he does. Because we do see people rising to great heights in their musical career without selling their souls. Okay, so I mean, we have phenomenal stars. You have the Kirk Franklins of this world. In fact, the truth be told, a whole lot of gospel musicians really making a mark, and they didn't go sign the dotted line to the devils somewhere. No, I'm not.
Yeah, Pastor Temi sounds like he was to run for office. Yeah. Do you know, Pastor Temi, I was just saying that, okay, that was church right there. It was like, for a few seconds, you took us right straight into church, talking about us not being aware of, or being kept away from that awareness of the power that we carry. And that is the truth, So I like the way you've put it, because you've not denied that, yes, they exist, that is there, but only if you knew how much powerful you are as a child of God and the power that resides in you. So that is so good. Thank you so much. Yes, Pastor Temi, do you want to answer us? Are you nursing the idea of running for an office?
He already said no.
No, unless God tells me that somewhere down the road, I have no plans.
He's leaving the door open, isn't he?
Why would I leave this position? This position that, as far as I'm concerned, is a higher position because the priest, the prophet, is the kingmaker. Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm a kingmaker, but you understand what I mean. So my job is to empower and encourage, mentor, and coach those that are going to enter into all of those kind of roles and kind of positions. Christians really need to get involved in politics so that we can have influence and all of that. However, I'm going to say something now that might be a little bit controversial in some belief systems, but I think if people think through it, they will understand better. That in terms of our assignment as a church, which as the body of Christ, which is to win hearts and minds, we win it. We win the hearts and minds of men and women by convincing them. We don't win it by legislation. It's good for us to be in a position to be able to influence legislation, particularly to stop great atrocities. Yeah. But to think that that is our primary tool as the body of Christ and as Christians to win the world by being able to control governments and put the laws in place that forces people to behave in a particular way. That's not it. Our assignment was to win their heart where they willingly surrender to Christ Jesus, and it's not by law. So as I will push, coach, encourage, motivate believers to get into government, get into politics, get into all of those things, I will still tell them that you must understand that at the end of the day, your assignment as a believer still involves winning the hearts and minds of men, and not thinking that it is by laws that we're going to achieve that.
Wow, thank you. Yes, well done, Pastor Temi. See, we're all rooting for you. In fact, if you decide to, if God says that you should run for an office, you have an army of people already anyway who will go out there and vote for you. So yeah, thank you so much, sir, for that. Dr. Zubi, I was going to call you Pastor Zubi, just right there. Yeah, Minister Zubi, by the way, we're now in the spiritual realm. And so I have a question for you. And this is more, Pastor Temi, you might as well also answer if you want to add something to it. And this takes me straight back to the village people you mentioned earlier when you were responding to the question on what Illuminati is. And you did say that, of course, are they there? They are there, but do I believe that they can do anything to my life or to anyone's life or not? But that's a question for us to answer. But as Christians, because this is I'd say that our growing up, all the things that we learn, we read about, and all, they form the decisions that we make eventually. And this also applies to the vaccine that we've been talking about, where people have said, forget it. I don't want to take this vaccine because I remember someone issued an article or released a video 15 years ago and predicted 2020, a pandemic will happen, and we are here today. So now the question is, for people like that, when we have this sort of information around us, and I think if you remember, we kind of touched on this on the Sunrise Show, when we have this information, and as Christians, what would you say is the first step for us to take? Because there are people who say that when I read something and I'm not sure about it, I just go straight and pray. God, what does this mean? And other people say, well, if I pray and I don't hear anything, how would I know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to either choose to believe them or find an alternative to what they've said. So as Christians, what do you say to us, or what would you say to us if we we come across something about this vaccine that we've been talking about, about village people, because that is very, very real. People are in this country, for instance, who have refused to go home for God knows how many years because of village people. So what would you say to us in terms of dealing with those things?
Thanks, Vivi. Just to say to anybody who is not African, we're not talking of YMCA when we say village people.
Oh, yes, that's true.
So yeah, there's a plumber, a builder somewhere. No, something else completely. But you know, it's an interesting question you asked, because I think this ties in with actually what the conversation earlier was, particularly when Pastor Timmy was talking about the light and being where there is darkness, and the salt and being part of the gravy. You know, one of the things, of course, I've been in what you would call science for a long time now. And you know, the funny thing, some of the most interesting views I have about science come from believers, or at least people who say they are believers. And you know, and it's interesting, okay, the perception that some people have when it comes to, I say when they say science, because of course, what is science, right? You're talking of so many different fields of study, different bodies of knowledge, but people just lump them all together. And so there is no substitute for light. Okay, you know, you can do whatever you like. You can try to use sonar and ultrasound and voice guided direction, but when the light shines, as long as your eyes are working, it just makes a big difference, because then you see when you see, you make good decisions. You know, the Bible says that my people perish for lack of knowledge, or without vision the people perish. And then Pastor Amy likes to say, without vision without people, the vision is hindered.
Yeah.
And you know, the funny thing, that doesn't just apply. The Bible, when that is being said, it didn't just say Christian people or church people. That's just a statement. When you talk about things like global conspiracies, that people who want to take over the world, they need people to do that, right?
Mhm.
No matter how powerful they are, one man, one woman, a group of 10 people can't just sit in one cave somewhere. They need people to do their bidding.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, on the one hand, when you ascribe all of this power to some of these causes, when you make decisions that feed into whatever these agenda and these propaganda may be, you are becoming one of their people, right? The people that the enemy needs to actually do the bidding. Because think about the Garden of Eden. No matter how you might think cunning, powerful, if you use that word, that the serpent may have been, the serpent could do nothing without the cooperation of Eve and Adam,
Mhm.
right? So it needed the people. So that's one thing to bear in mind. So when we are propagating these points of view, and when we are shutting our eyes because we love the darkness, we've got so used to the darkness, and someone shines the light and we say, oh, it's so painful, I can't look, and we persist in darkness, we are, in other words, helping the darkness to stay, right? The other thing to say about people, we have also been blessed. Because do you remember the story of Elijah, when Elijah was at that point, and he was threatened after his great victory over those 850 prophets of Baal and Asher, and he said, and then he threw a tantrum. He said, God, it's just me, take my life, I'm the only one left. God said, don't think too much about yourself. You're letting yourself get into your own head. After 7,000, you're not even 1 in 100. You're not even 1 in 1,000. There are 7,000 other people like you who have not bowed their knee. And God had preserved all of those people. And where do you think those people were? Okay, yes, the prophet, the gentleman in question had kept them and protected them. But before they went into that cave, they were actually living in the same Israel.
That's right.
They were actually there among the people, right? Why am I saying this? One of the greatest challenges, and sometimes it made me really sad through the time I was in training as a scientist and all the things, were the preconceptions and some of the views I heard from people who said they were people of faith. Straight away, they kind of had this view that if you were a scientist, suddenly you had to be anti-God. If you ask certain questions, it means that you didn't have faith anymore. And a lot of that was said from a place of darkness. Because if you asked a lot of them, what do you even understand by science? You would realize that they don't, the very basic things they don't know. What you need to do when you don't have knowledge is to find knowledge, not bury your head in the sand, right? And so what God has done is that he has ensured that people like us and many other people of faith are in all of the different places. So that if somebody tomorrow, if it were even possible that somebody somewhere wanted to orchestrate all these things, it wouldn't be an easy task because you have believers everywhere.
Yeah.
You have, so how are you going to do it? And that's one thing people don't understand. You have, so it is a blessing, and we need to have people, right? Of course, I say this, I'm not suggesting for any moment that Christians have the monopoly of integrity. In fact, some of the people with the greatest integrity I've met are people who have said they have no faith. So that's not what I'm saying, but we're having a conversation around faith. And I'm saying that people of faith sometimes have allowed themselves to be playing, whether they recognize it or not, on the side of darkness against the light. Right, and that's one thing we should not do. So when it comes to these perspectives, when you have these things, what you should always ask yourself is, where can I find the light? I need the light. Do not be afraid of the light. If you're a child of the light, you should not be afraid of the light. You should not be, and a lot of these things, when you hear people making these claims and they do not want to subject these claims to verification, somebody asks you, can you show me how you know? And then you say, well, you don't. If you cannot, if you're not willing to actually show how you know and provide evidence, not proof, there's a difference. That's a lesson for another day. Don't say proof. There's a difference between proof and evidence. If you cannot show evidence to support the claims you're making, and somebody challenges you to, or you're afraid of, if you think that evidence will undermine your faith, then I say to you, what you have is not faith.
Yeah.
Okay. Because your faith is the evidence of things not seen. So if you take evidence out of it, what you have is not faith. So I think in general, I speak to believers and I say, do not be afraid of the light. We are people of light. The light means that you shine the light on it. And if there is darkness in it, that darkness has to flee. So whether you're hearing something from somebody who is in a place of authority, whether whether that's within the church or outside the church, and they are saying things that you can't verify, you should be able to say, I'm sorry, can you please provide evidence for what you're saying? And if the person starts to push back and rather than providing evidence, starts to say things like, you're doubting me, then you need to ask the question, right? Ask yourself, whenever Jesus was asked those kinds of questions, what was his response? Did he ever say, oh, no, how dare you ask me that kind of question? Would you know who I am? No, he never did. Right? When Thomas, I mean, we do a lot about Thomas. Do you know that some of the greatest challenges about our faith, some people actually question that Jesus lived, but that argument was completely shut down because you look at historical records, he was there. Some people question that he rose from the dead. Now, do you know it would be very easy to make the argument and say, Jesus didn't arise bodily. He didn't resurrect bodily. He was a specter. He was, guess because of whom that argument can be made. Somebody that a lot of Christians like to hate. Somebody that said, you know what, I need to touch this. When I touch it, now people say Thomas, but if Thomas didn't do that empirical investigation, just tomorrow somebody could say, well, he was a ghost. How do you know you didn't touch him? How do you know he wasn't a ghost? You'd say, Thomas would say, hang on, I touched him. That's why John, when he was writing in First John or in the book of John, later on, he said, the word of truth which you have touched, which we have handled.
Yes.
Right? So after Thomas did, they all now went, I too want to touch.
That's right.
They went and touched. But it was Thomas that said, you know what, I need to make sure. And Jesus didn't say, hang on, no, you can't touch. He said, here you are. Touch. So I think that we are people of the light. We are the people of the light. And I really want to challenge ourselves. Let's take our thinking higher. Let's take our minds higher. Let's ask questions. It's not a lack of faith to ask questions, to ask for evidence. In fact, Paul described the people of Berea as noble because they went to check. So when all of these things, you get these videos and people make claims, and sometimes they might be people that you trust. They might be people who are specialists in one area, maybe in the area of faith, and then they start making statements about science. There's a reason people like us spent many years getting trained, getting PhDs, writing publications, and so forth. Going to Bible school, I'm sorry, it's not a substitute for that. Okay, so you need to ask questions and make sure that you get the right types of information from the right types of people, and then we'll be good. So I think I've taken the long route to the answer, but I think that my short answer is get them.
Prof, honestly, someone should please pass the offering baskets round right now. It's like I don't even know what else to say to that. I don't know what
I
else to
think
say.
that
You've just done it
Zubia has
justice,
done
man. Like,
superb job. And the truth be told, we are on a war against religion. As much as the Christian faith might be designated a religion, in our understanding of what religion means puts us at odds with religion. And even Jesus himself was constantly coming against the religious establishment of his day. And the religious establishment of his day didn't want reasonable conversations, didn't want to be questioned. And we have to let go of some of our old religious way of thinking, traditional ways of thinking and even believing. Now, Minister Zubi kept on talking about light. We need to be the light, and that's scripture. But I think that a lot of the time, believers also, when they hear such words, because there are certain words that have become coined words in Christendom, when they hear light, they are thinking, oh, supernatural, spiritual, heavenly light shining in a room. Some of them, oh, the light of God's word. Yeah, great. But the truth be told, light is knowledge, it's information. That's what it is. So, yes, the word of God for us as believers, the Bible is the primary place we go to check. But there is knowledge in so many other areas that is accurate, that is balanced, that is true. In fact, when you read in the book of Romans, it says that the invisible God is easily known and seen in the visible things. And what was it talking about? It was talking about nature. It was talking about everything that we can see, even outside of the written word, the Bible itself. Because truth is truth, is truth, is truth, is consistent. So the things that are true in nature, true in society, true in natural laws are true. They are not going to run contradistinctive to God's word, and God's word is not going to run contradistinctive to those things. There might be spiritual laws that are superior to natural laws, that in certain circumstances you can use the superior law to suspend the lower law. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that the law does not exist. Yeah. So I'm really at war with ignorance, and faith should not be an excuse for ignorance. Every time we project our faith as some form of smokescreen for not knowing, we've discredited the faith. And we've let those that are outside the faith look at us as if we were just clueless. Those guys, they don't think. We've got to stop and think. Can we think for a change? Can we think? Can we stop and think this thing? And this is really where my passion is in this season at this time, that it's time for us to challenge believers to really think about what they're thinking about, to examine their belief systems. Is not that faith is wrong. It's just that we haven't made sure that it's rooted and founded properly on a strong foundation and not just fictitious ideas. And I think it's what, if anything, what's the amount of belief that people of faith seem to be exercising in the conspiracy theories and the rest. It's actually evidence of the lack of a very strong biblical foundation of true knowledge. Yeah. And we've got to open our minds up. God said, come, let us reason together. So let's reason together. And we'll be able to find the real truth. We can go on and on. Let's go deeper to some of the questions that have been arising.
Pastor Temi, thank you so much. Prof, you said one thing. You said that asking questions is not a sign of unbelief. And I think that is very powerful. As Christians, we need to be in that place where we are comfortable to ask those questions. And it helps us. Pastor Temi, you just said it as well. You said faith should not be an excuse for ignorance. It is, these are great words here that you're giving to us tonight. And I guess as we're talking about, and this is what the Spirit of God does, right? We're talking about vaccine, and now he's taking us into, talking about faith, talking about light, and this is all for our deliverance. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you. We have a question, and this question is taking us back to the vaccine conversation again, and I would love us to answer, because we are part of the community. The question says that, why do you think people of color are much lower in taking up the vaccine? So, I mean, Pastor Temi, if you want to go for it first, that's fine.
Let me jump in quickly, and I know I guess Zubi will still have something to say about it. Again, it comes back to what we've just been discussing, our belief systems. The people of color tend to be more about what we believe than about what is evidence or what is knowledge. We tend to be so, and it's not a bad thing, so to say, and it could be a bad thing actually. So we tend to be about what we believe. We hear all of these things. We are the ones that are likely to believe the theories that are fly around before anybody else. Yeah. That belief system as regards Illuminati, it's strong amongst people of color. We really believe heavily in those things. They're powerful, they're strong, they're the ones manipulating every single thing we see upon the face of the earth. And a lot of the time, it is actually fear masquerading as faith, where we're saying that, oh, it's because of my faith, but it's actually because of your fear, and you're just calling it faith, and it becomes a vicious circle. So we believe certain theories, like the vaccination is meant to kill off Black people and people of all of this kind of the Bain community, yeah, and we turn a blind eye to the fact that the larger preponderance of deaths right now is actually not in the Bain community; it's amongst the white people everywhere, yeah. It's not that Bain people are not dying, but when you really tally all the numbers, there are more than enough white people dying along with Black people dying. So if this was a targeted attempt to wipe out the Black race, then it's a really failed attempt. And if there was such an agenda, that agenda could have and should have been executed many years ago with the amount of vaccines that have flooded Africa prior to this vaccine that has not even been allowed into Africa yet, or Africa has not been able to procure. Yeah. So when you look at the facts against what people are choosing in the BAME community to believe, because belief is a choice. You can choose to believe regardless of whether it has evidence or not. I just choose to believe this, so I believe it. It becomes an issue. It becomes an issue. So now, if we believe those things, then it is still this community that's going to take less of the vaccine, because we've already believed an error. And because we believed the error, we don't take the vaccine. Now, what happens when you don't take the vaccine? You become more susceptible to the virus. You become more susceptible to the virus, more of you get sick from COVID. More of you die. Then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that, you see, we told you that all this thing was about killing us, but you fail to connect the dots that the reason that the rates are rising in the community is also being contributed to by our flawed belief systems. As regards how high it has been in the BAME community, there are many other factors that also play in, not just our belief system. It's also stuff that has to do with our socioeconomic status, structured stuff that has to do with the fact that there's a high preponderance of being community at the front line of the health sector, and dealing with these things one on one. So it's not as simple as the conspiracy theories might want us to believe. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Pastor Temi. I'm sure, Prof, you want to add something to that, please. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Okay. So in short, I said there are three kind of broad factors there that reduce the uptake, right? That means that people of color are less likely to take it. History, culture, and religion. Note that I didn't say faith, I said religion. Okay, and Pastor Temi has already explained that previously, so I'm not going to talk about that. But history, culture, religion. There's a historical element to this, right? Because the people of color, the so-called minorities here, there is a history for many of them, in the first instance, how they got to where they are. Across the Atlantic in the United States, there's a history of the government behaving in despicable manners towards people who are seen to be a minority, and therefore that has seeded a distrust. So when and people have learned, unfortunately, with bitter experience, that when they're saying, "Oh, this is for everyone," and historically, that everyone did not include certain people. When things were working well, it didn't work. So that history altogether has meant that there are generations upon generations who have been taught, never ever trust these guys. Doesn't matter what you're hearing or what you see, don't trust. So there's that historical element that's being dealt with, but we cannot, ignore that. And when we are also addressing some of these things, we have to understand that there are people that they have been conditioned that way just over time. There's the cultural element of it. Okay, and then this speaks to perhaps more from people who represent the diaspora, who are from the so-called motherland, because culturally, a lot of our culture, at least until recently, has emphasized not questioning elders, okay, or not questioning people in authority. So that made it very easy for certain people to manipulate others. All they needed to do was to get to a place of authority, either through age or position or whatever, and then suddenly you find people holding views that anybody else would say this doesn't make sense, but they have huge numbers of people following them because culturally speaking, that's what they've been conditioned to do. So there's a cultural element to that, and that means that actually the other way would work. If you have the same people saying, "Hey, it's okay," even if it's not, everybody will run. So we still have the same. And then the third one is that of religion. We've talked of that already. People not understanding the difference between having faith and being religious, and a system of observances not based on anything that you're convinced of, but because it's a do, don't, and then you lose sight of the wood for the trees. So I think these three elements put together in the context of what Pastor Temi said earlier, and these are the three things that we're having to deal with. First of all, recognizing the unique cultural aspects of it for the BAME community and being able to be sensitive to that and being able to understand that context while pointing at changes and improvements that have been made, how these things have been dealt with and what the safeguards in place now to ensure they don't happen again. That's important. Yeah, the cultural element to recognize that, well, yes, like you said, we have to tread softly, but also help people to gently start to renew their minds, as it were, to start to look at things, as it were, be in the Christ culture rather than any other kind of specific culture. And then the religious one, really, yes, we are not religious. We should not be. That's not what we're called to be. We should be called to people of faith, and we should not be afraid to ask questions so that we can get knowledge where there's ignorance.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's like you're giving us, yourself and Pastor Temi, you're just giving us so much information, and we're thinking, well, I am thinking here, like, oh my God, like this is so good. This is just too good information for us. I remember when this whole pandemic started, well, in February last year. Oh wow, a year ago. And the rumor was, oh, this thing doesn't catch, like the Black people don't get the virus, and I remember I traveled, I was on a plane and I didn't use any mask or anything. And it goes back to that place of information, that place of when we said ignorance, because at that time, because it had not affected anyone around me, I didn't feel there was any need to go out there, understand a bit more about this virus they're even talking about. We all heard about it when it was in China in 2019, right? But it was a case of, it's not here. We wouldn't take that time. We wouldn't spend all that effort trying to understand it. But staying in that place of ignorance, I think it's actually bondage. and Pastor Temi, you alluded to this earlier, even at yourself, Prof, about the devil just trying to put us in the dark, not knowing how much power we carry ourselves. We're not going to be able to challenge anything. We're not going to be able to question anything. And this is what I think as a people, if none of all of this conversation we've had on vaccine and vaccination, the COVID and everything has had any impact on you. I think this is more of a call to check in, renewing your minds in terms of your faith in God. Are you operating in faith or in fear? I know Pastor Temi would say, if Pastor Temi were to say that, it would sound a lot more spiritual and powerful, because he's a pastor. So, but I'm sure you got the gist, right? Pastor Temi, do you want to say something to it?
Somebody's already asking for part 3. God will
yes.
us to see whether that is something we can countenance. Yeah, but this is a conversation that definitely needs to continue. I think one of the good things that we really need to take out of this is that it's time for believers to actually exercise themselves in critical thinking and in asking questions. I think this is extremely important, and also confronting our inherent biases, because sometimes we come at things with our already preconceived ideas, and where we have decided that we stand, we've already chosen a stance, and therefore no matter what is said, no matter what facts are presented, what statistics, it doesn't matter, we're still going to disbelieve it. And it's also a problem even in the right interpretation of God's word, because when you go to the Bible with a preconceived idea, or you've already decided what you want it to be, then what you are doing is not exegesis, dividing up the text to understand the text. What you are doing is some form of eisegesis, where you are putting into the text what you want to be into the text. And this happens even when we look at facts. But if there's anything I want believers to get out of this whole experience and this whole season, is to now have a framework for judging and examining whatever information comes your way, to see whether it is true or not. You need to be weary of absolute statements. Once you start hearing everybody, most, all, you need to slow down a little bit and say, now, does this person have enough information to be able to actually say all, or even to be able to say most? Because that's already putting it in a funny area. You need to ask yourself, where is the root source of the information you are hearing? You've got to be able to check that, because that starts to tell you. Then another question you need to ask yourself is that, what does this produce? What is the end result of this information I just heard? What action is this going to produce, or is it calling for? And that action that it is calling for, that's going to produce, what is the impact of that action upon the whole of society? When we start to have these kind of frameworks, and we're using these kind of frameworks to question everything that comes our way, it becomes easier to immediately discern what is totally inaccurate, that needs to be thrown out, and what is accurate. Now, we have to be honest, and I'm so happy that Zubi said so a few moments ago, that things have gone wrong in the past. Yes, Big Pharma has made some mistakes in the past. Yes, there have been tests and using of vaccine in unwarranted and unsanctioned ways in the past. That's in the past. That doesn't mean that that's exactly what's happening today. I would love it for Big Pharma to actually come out and admit that, okay, yeah, we actually did mess it up in 19 something or in whatever year they mess it up, but we've now dealt with that. And the truth is that it is, even if you do a Google search, you'll be able to see some of the historical events where it went wrong, and what measures have been put in place since that time that it went wrong, to make sure that it doesn't go wrong again. But you don't want to talk about that. You only want to talk about what you have decided to believe. I was quite intrigued in our last conversation, where And I don't know Bill Gates personally. I've never met him. He doesn't know me, But I mean, I saw what was being said about Bill Gates with such emphasis and such absoluteness. This is who he is. This is what he does. So I said, okay, let me even go and do a search on Bill Gates. And I tried. I went to TED Talks. I looked at the various TED Talks where he spoke. I even looked at the famed TED Talk where he spoke about the next existential crisis of the human race was going to be a pandemic. But I couldn't see how he was that made him complicit in the virus. The guy was speaking from science. He was speaking from obvious facts. Anybody that looked at the facts, looked at the statistics, looked at both history and what was happening there could have made the same conclusions and come to the same end. Now, it's just about our critical thinking. Even right now, I can sit down and project a particular course that this virus is going to take. Does that mean I'm the one that's making it take that course? I'm just simply studying what's happening, and therefore I can tell where things are going. So it's a call for believers to wake up and think and develop more accurate means of judging the information that they hear, particularly the Bain community.
Thank you so much, Pastor Temi. I can't believe, I don't know if you noticed, we're almost 2 hours into this conversation. When you're having fun, this is what they say, you just keep going and going. But I think at this point we want to say, first of all, thank you to every single person who has joined us tonight, and those who joined us in the first conversation as well. And for all those who have sent in comments, questions, some different views on this. We all don't need to agree on this, but the main thing is that we want to make sure that whatever it is that we're basing our decisions on, it is the right thing. Okay. So, and I hope this has blessed you. And someone said, oh, we need part three of this. Well, Pastor Temi, as the shepherd, God will lead and direct him to let us know if that will happen or not. But yes, tomorrow, let me just use this opportunity. Pastor Temi, please indulge me for a few minutes. I'd like to invite you all to our Sunrise Talk show tomorrow morning. I mean, you need to join that show if you haven't watched it before. Just join it at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's only for half an hour before service starts, and it's myself and Prof. Zubi. He is Prof on that show. No questions asked, no. But he has a segment there where he's the pastor of the house at that time, where he just takes us into service. But you want to join us, please come and join us. Let's discuss this. Some of these conversations, they've come off that platform as well, off the show. Just because we have limited time, we're not able to go into quite a lot. But this is an opportunity. Pastor Temi, thank you so much. As we said last time, this is very rare. You've shown us good leadership in leading this conversation. It is very difficult to get everyone to be on the same page with you, especially on this. So if I've seen friends literally fight over whether it's a good thing to take or not. And for us to still have this, it is absolute a pleasure. Thank you so much, sir. I will give us 1 minute each because I want us to end this at 9 on the dot. And I think we have about 2 minutes and some seconds. 1 minute each or 50 seconds, actually. No, 30 seconds, as Prof would say. 30 seconds to please say a final word to our viewers tonight. So, Prof, go first. So I'm timing you.
Okay, thank you. So in this time, we've looked at a number of things. Of course, there are still some outstanding things we didn't get to talk about. We didn't talk about 5G. We didn't talk about things about the composition of vaccine. But the bottom line is this. We've got the knowledge, okay? God has positioned us and taken us through the route that we've taken and given us this body of knowledge so that we can use it to shine the light. So do not be afraid. When you have those questions, reach out. Let's do this together. We are the light in our world. Let's shine. Let's not be part of darkness. Let's shine.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for that. Pastor Temi, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Bibi. Thank you, Zubi. You guys are doing a great job, and we'll keep on pressing forward. We will consider doing a part 3. Come, let us reason together. And the same openness and objectivity that I require or I ask of everybody that has an alternative opinion, we also exercise on ourselves. So we approach this with an open mind, and we'll continue to do so. We are not ignorant of the devices of the enemy. We are not saying there is no conspiracy theory and there is no Illuminati. We're just saying that not everything is that. And let's be careful that we're not ascribing more power to the devil than it actually is there. Yeah. We are more powerful than we ever knew, and we need to walk in that faith and that belief. Please join us in Sunrise tomorrow morning. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. And also the service. There's something powerful coming in that service also. We are on a crusade against ignorance and against darkness. We're going to be pushing out the truth and the light. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor Temi. Thank you, Dr. Zubi, Prof. Zubi. Thank you, our viewers. God bless you. As we said, don't forget to join us tomorrow at 9 o'clock for the Sunrise Talk Show. And of course, you don't want to get that and then miss out from the word that will be coming from the throne of God, So you stay with us at 9:30 into the service. It's only about an hour, 20, 25 minutes or so. So yes, join us tomorrow, and we'll see you. Hope you have a lovely, lovely night tonight, and then see you soon, very, very soon, by God's grace. Thank you all. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.